Erika. Welcome back to the Deep Life podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on again. So excited to talk with you today.
I am so excited. And I'm so excited. This is actually my very first solo guest talking episode. And I couldn't be more honored that I'm sharing this space with you.
I'm honored that you chose me for the first one. So fun.
And we're going to dive in to something that I have recently discovered about myself. And I can't wait to hear more of your expertise and thoughts on this. But in the fall of this year, I specifically remember it was September because I was in Colorado at the time. I was sitting down journaling, I think, and I was thinking to myself about feeling emotions, feeling things on my body. And I had a light bulb moment that my entire life, I've never wanted to feel anything. If there are like workout clothes, yoga pants, sports bras, they're really tight on my body, I rip them off as soon as I'm done working out. Water, like being in the shower, I'll take the quickest showers. Like the feeling of water on my body has never been comfortable. I've always pegged myself as someone who doesn't love the pool or the ocean. I'll go in because I know of the amazing benefits of it, but I'm not someone who's going to stay in there.
It's not pleasurable.
Yeah. If a bug touched me when I was outside, I'd freak out. Those are material things. But then on the flip side, I never really wanted to feel emotions. As a child, I was always told I was too sensitive and crying. I held in my tears for so long. And then I developed so much anxiety and stress, and I didn't want to feel that. It was just this huge full circle light bulb moment for me of, whoa, I've never wanted to feel anything in my life, but now I want to, and I'm beginning to, and I'm sitting with really uncomfortable feelings, and I'm sitting in the shower enjoying the water on me. So I'd love to hear if this is something that you've experienced or if that you've heard is common with your coaching other women.
Oh, I love this because I knew we were going to talk about feelings, but obviously I didn't have that intro about you yet. Like we hadn't had this conversation offline. And I was thinking like, I bet she's highly sensitive. And like, this is the source of where we're going in the discussion. But, it was just kind of an assumption. But like now you fully describe what it means to be highly sensitive. And since we last spoke, I niched down my coaching. And I don't know if you know that this might be like a total magical coincidence to highly sensitive women. So I don't just coach for stress and nervous system anymore. I coach for stress and nervous system for highly sensitive women. So I feel like I have goosebumps. I feel like this is kind of a magical coincidence happening here. So I'm like extra excited.
I love that.
In short, absolutely. 100%. It is at the center of what I teach and what I coach. I think for everybody, feeling is difficult, but it's even more difficult for highly sensitive because, and I think there's two different kind of reasons here. One, like you said, we grow up and we're told that we're too sensitive. Like, don't take things so personally. Like, chill, it's not that deep. Like we are told that our sensitivity is something that's not okay and we need to like turn it down. So we learn that to be loved, to be accepted, to belong in our family unit, we can't be that sensitive. And then we grow up a little bit more and we get in society and then we realize that what is valued is not sensitivity. It's actually really frowned upon, and you will be told that that makes you weak and that makes you vulnerable to be taken advantage of and to be manipulated. And instead, what is asked of you, what is seen as successful and worthy, is that kind of strength and resilience that comes from almost being stoic, right? It's like if you can be calm through anything, but the truth is, when you're highly sensitive, there's a huge strength in actually being vulnerable with it and letting people see you through it. But it's so not welcomed in our families and in our society that we learn really quick to be like, all right, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, like for my own survival, I don't want to be shunned from the tribe. I'd like to still be loved and appreciated and accepted. So I'm going to put this pretend cape on and just bottle it up and pretend it doesn't exist. And then one of two things happen. Either we get completely overwhelmed because the more we bottle it up, the more it kind of builds up to the surface, and then we kind of explode emotionally. And either we're like irritable, or, you know, we become like very snappy for just a moment, because right away then we feel shame and we're like, oh shit, I know I'm not supposed to do that. But like there's a point where you can't control it anymore, right? Like you're trying to like push it down, push it down, push it down. At some point it's going to come up. The other path, and I think this is what you're talking about a little bit more, is that we learn all sorts of coping mechanism to feel nothing. So to numb ourselves, to move into avoidance. And the thing with that is that our system is super smart, and it will listen and it will, you know, do all the numbing and the avoidance, but we can't be selective of what we numb. When we start numbing, we numb everything. So we're also going to numb joy, and we're also going to numb love, and we're just going to stop feeling it all, because all of it is too much anyways. Like it's not even that just the crying is too much. Like I was told growing up, like if I was excited, like, okay, like relax, like, you know, so like I was told even that my excitement was too much. It was not even just the quote unquote negative emotion or the uncomfortable emotion. It was all of it. So it just gets all numb. And then we wake up one day and we're like, I kind of feel nothing for my partner. Like not good, not bad. It's very neutral.
Yeah.
I kind of feel meh about everything in my life. And you're like, why? What's happening? Like from the outside perspective, things look fairly good. Why am I not loving my life? Why am I not excited about life? Why am I not, you know, motivated? And because you've been numbing as a way to survive, to be accepted, to be loved, and all those things. So, and that's for everybody, but even more for highly sensitive women and people, because there are men too that are highly sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely. You said that so eloquently, and my body was feeling the yes, check, yes, check, check, everything. And again, I do feel, no pun intended here, I do feel I'm stepping into my power as a sensitive person, because I'm just I can now energetically feel like things when people say them. Costa Rica, so anyone, I will say this, but Erika is in Costa Rica right now. I am so jealous. Our listeners will know that Dan and I just journeyed back from Costa Rica a little over a month ago. And the retreat that we were on there was a lot of yoga. We also had a beautiful psilocybin journey. But the first day that I did yoga there, and Erika, you know that Dan and I, especially Dan, he works like workout people, you know, bigger, faster, stronger. But I've been getting into yoga recently. And the first day we did it there, when I was laying in Shavasana, I was feeling the chi, the life force energy within my arms and palms. And I felt life back into my body that I think I had honestly worked out, meaning like I was working out, I believe too much, that I was putting so much stress on my body that it was no longer an acute stress, because I was doing it every single day for the past 10 years, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah. I mean, physical activity is a stress on the nervous system and how much you do. And then all like our thought pattern, or, you know, the mental kind of juggling we do, the society we live in, like stress accumulates, and it builds up to a point where if you look at this from the nervous system perspective, your fight or flight, if you do nothing about it and it just builds up and builds up and builds up, at some point it will flip into a numb, frozen state. You will not stay in your fight or flight forever. That's impossible, because your body needs to conserve energy, and it's too much because everything is on high alert when you're in your fight or flight. And so if you're like working out all the time, very intensely, I'm not saying working out is bad. I'm saying if you're working out on top of a stressful job and like fighting with your partner and, running all these errands and taking care of the kids. And if your life is super intense and then you're adding the stress of working out on your body, or let's take another example, restricting your food because you're trying to lose weight. That's a stress on your body, right? So like there's all sorts of things we do that are stressful for a body that we don't necessarily think about. But as that accumulates, your body's like, dude, I can't do it anymore. And it pulls the plug, literally. It puts the foot all the way on the brake and it forces you to stop so you can rebuild your energy. And this is when we feel collapsed, when we feel numb, when we feel quote unquote frozen. And we're like, I'm not motivated. I'm not interested. I don't want to do anything. I just can't anymore. And that's a natural process that your body does. It's a really smart process because you're not listening to the cues of you need to rest, you need to relax, you need to manage, your life right now. Because you're not listening, the body's like, you're not listening? Okay, I'm going to force a shutdown so I can protect you and save your life.
Wow. Isn't it just fascinating how
it is
intelligent our bodies are? And
Incredible.
They're always working in our favor. But
yeah, whether we like it or not in that moment.
Yeah. we're not necessarily really taught to kind of know these things, to listen to our bodies. And that's why I feel these conversations are so important, because I was trying to think about like, how did I get to this point? Like, how did I get to this point of, whoa, I'm sitting down one day and I finally realized, after this decade-long wellness, spirituality, health journey that I'm on, that I didn't realize that I never wanted to feel anything. And I think that that's maybe something that a lot of women and men could be grappling with. I think that if I didn't realize this, other people must not realize it. So I'd love to hear your opinion. Does this happen with light bulb moments of others? But I also know you coach women to help them
feel their feelings.
So talk about that.
So maybe a couple months back, I posted like randomly this thing on Instagram because it has been something that was at the heart of my coaching, because I know then it allows you to tap, like you were saying, in your strength as a highly sensitive person. Because if you're disconnected and you're numb, you can't actually lean into what you already are really good at, like intuition, for example, right? Yeah. So I posted this thing and it was like a meme from Jennifer Lawrence, I think, when she went on First We Feast, the show where they eat hot wings. Do you know about that show?
Yeah.
Okay. So she's on that show and they're, eating hot wings, and she gets to 8, 9, or 10 or whatever. And she's crying, telling to the host, like, why? Or, like, why are we doing this? Like, she's panicking in the moment. Like, what do you mean? Like, we keep going? Like, what do you mean? What am I doing here? And so I clipped that and I added a sentence, something like, when I realized I had to stop avoiding my feelings so I could get out of overwhelm. And that post exploded and went viral. Like, I had never got anything gone viral. And I was like, okay, yes. We're not alone. It's just not me and you and, my clients. Like, people don't like to feel, and it makes them find that panic that she was expressing because of the spiciness. It's the equivalent panic in their heart of like what it means to feel your feeling.
Yes.
And that was like such an aha moment of like, okay, like hundreds of thousands of people are like, yes, this is my experience. And I was like, Yeah. So that was a little aha for me of like, yeah, we need to talk about this more.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm actually like, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because as we were kind of discussing some points, I had written down, feeling something that is uncomfortable, unfamiliar to you can send people into a panic. And 100%. It did me. And I remember I was speaking to a woman and she was telling me she was having severe anxiety about needing to return an Amazon package into a store that she's never gone into, because within the store she knows where something is but doesn't know where the Amazon drop box is, and it was too overwhelming to her that she drove further to drop this Amazon return package than something that was close to her house. And I was like, I resonated with it because that anxiousness of not being familiar within a territory, I got it. But at that point too, I was like, oh, I guess I have healed myself, because I'm not so afraid to walk into either a, building, a scenario, a social setting that I'm unfamiliar with, but it can be debilitating. I felt so awful for this woman, and she couldn't tell me why. So again, I knew that she didn't know this hyper panicked anxiety state because she had lived in it her whole life. And it breaks my heart. And that's why I'm so glad that we're having this conversation, bringing it to light, having these conversations. There is going to be an energetic charge to it. And it's just bringing more light and emphasis on it that needs to be recognized.
Yeah. And I think it's a good reminder for people, because it's not because you feel a sense of panic that it means you need to stop and back out. But it could also mean that you need to be loving and caring for yourself. And maybe you need to stop and back out right now, So there's a discussion to have around the validity and the importance of that message that is the panic, right? The panic is not just telling you like you're weak. The panic is telling you, I am literally afraid for my life right now. And we talked about this earlier, how smart the nervous system is. So in that moment of panic, it might be time for you to take a step back and be like, okay, I'm pushing a little too much onto my kind of limit, and go at it with an approach of like, let me dip my toe and pull back. Let me dip my foot and pull back. Let me go a little further, feel, more the temperature of the water and come back. And give yourself permission that you don't have to go all in to all the really hard emotions and the biggest grief from that person you've lost, you've never cried about right away. Maybe you start by feeling frustration first. Like something that is a little bit more gentle on your system. Maybe you start to feel worry before fear. Maybe you start to feel sadness before grief, right? There's emotions that are going to feel more accessible to you, that are going to feel less quote unquote dangerous to your system. So give yourself permission to start small, to go in and go out, to teach yourself. The go in and go out is really a strategy to teach yourself that you can take care of yourself, and that when you start to feel, you're not going to spiral out into the, if I start to cry, I'll never end story. I don't know if you've ever told yourself that story, but I know I have. Like, if I let myself cry, it's over.
Yeah. No, I haven't, but I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's going to be a new reframe of mine. So that's very helpful.
Yeah. So instead of being like, if I let myself go in this, I'm going to lose complete control, and this is one reason why I don't want to go in the emotion, you allow yourself to go just a little bit and then to back out of it. Just a little bit more and to back out of it. And finding grace for yourself and acceptance that that's good enough. You don't have to like throw yourself in the deep end and see if you're going to swim or sink. That's not very loving. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because that all or nothing can probably shock your system even more. And then,
yeah. The thing is that, especially if that strategy is coming from trauma, if you do something like all or nothing like that, you can reactivate that trauma within you. So it's not actually helpful in the long run, to show up for yourself with like this kindness and softness is actually going to bring you further in the long run, because you're not throwing yourself back down on the floor to have to get back up. I like the idea of like a ditch. And when you like experience something that is traumatic or very difficult, that will bring you in that panic, and you continue to push into it, it's like you fall all the way down into the ditch. Where if you're all the way down into the ditch, then it's a lot of effort to get yourself back out of the ditch. If you just kind of slip a little and then you get back out and you slip a little, like that's a lot less effort, right? It's a lot easier to like put yourself back up.
Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad that you brought that up. And it's the perfect analogy, I feel like. I do want to talk a little bit about trauma, because like you said, our body does keep the score.
100%.
Yeah. Have you read the book?
Yes.
I forget that. Yes, I read it years ago, and I started listening to it again on in Audible a few months ago. I haven't finished it, but it's so fascinating. But I do want to touch upon how trauma, and this doesn't have to be a major trauma in your body that
big T or small T.
Yeah. So if you could touch upon that, and how almost like how trauma, but even conditions like chronic stress, anxiety, what that does to our nervous system, and maybe touching upon the difference between parasympathetic and sympathetic states, and how we can kind of begin it. I don't know if you'd agree, but I feel beginning to heal my nervous system, I think, was one of the major factors in becoming aware of feeling and how I didn't like to feel before.
Yes. So we talked about it a little bit earlier when I was explaining how like chronic stress is our fight or flight. And then if we stay in that and we do nothing, eventually the body's going to pull the plug onto your system. So you go in rest, basically, right? So if you look at sympathetic and parasympathetic, it's two branches of your autonomic nervous system, meaning it's what happens automatically. It's too fast for you to control it, right? It's not like I am engaging my bicep. It's like your body's reacting in a flash second from the perceived danger or lack of safety that you see and think is around you. Your sympathetic is the foot on the gas. You get activated, you get like your breath's going to go faster, your heart's going to go faster, you're going to start to sweat. Your body is preparing to fight for your life or to run away from danger to save your life. So whatever, we call this state very often your fight or flight, because it kind of explains it really easily. I also like that analogy of foot all the way on the gas, meaning you're going to do everything you need to do to get yourself out of the problematic situation.
Yeah.
The parasympathetic branch is the relaxation branch. Is when everything is good and you perceive and you believe that everything is good and there's no need to fight. There's no need to flee. You can chill. You can relax. You can do nothing and it's going to be okay. In this state is where your body is able to digest physically and emotionally what has been happening to you, is where your body is able to rest, meaning to rebuild your energy for the next time that you have a flight or fight event. It's normal to go in and out. It's not bad to go in fight or flight. You need to actually be motivated to do stuff. You need to, like, it's an important part of your nervous system. And then in that rest, and we call it the rest, heal, and digest branch.
I love that.
In that branch, on top of the digestion, the resting is where your body can heal. So we will see in people that are in fight or flight chronically in their chronic stress, their immune system is shut. Like they will get sick easily because they don't have any capacity to heal anything. They don't have any capacity to fight a bug because their body is like ready and like focused on fighting the lion, quote unquote, that is not there in real life, but that is perceived in everything we do every day. Right? So those are like the two main branches, but this is kind of an older view of the nervous system. There's been this new kind of way of explaining it, which is polyvagal theory. Have you heard of that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the work of
Dr. Nicole LaPera, have you heard of her?
No, actually.
Oh, she's the holistic psychologist on Instagram. I'll forward you a post of her. She's awesome. She's written a couple books, and one that I read, it's like how to heal yourself, and it's just all about the nervous system, and she's a psychologist and what she's like learned and seen. She's just fascinating. So yeah, I have heard of exactly what you're talking about. I'm not as familiar with it, just like touched upon it, so I'd love to have you dive into it.
Parenting can be stressful and even overwhelming, especially if you have an overly sensitive child. What if there was a way to better understand, guide, and nurture your child's unique sensitivity and emotional intelligence to set them up for success on their developmental journey? Rooted Rhythm's signature course, Tuned In, offers a transformational process for parents of highly sensitive, super feeling, wise, and empathetic children. You know, Dan and I don't have children of our own, but we were both highly sensitive children growing up. And we know firsthand how difficult it can be to feel and process emotions in a productive and constructive way at such a young age. Recently, having gone through the Tuned In course, we both took away so much valuable information and practical tools we could utilize to reparent ourselves and to understand how to better use our sensitive nature to deepen our connection to ourselves as well as the world around us. The Tuned In course teaches parents concrete skills to meet their sensitive kids' needs in moments of intensity, increases their ability to connect deeply with their children, and supports a process of inner healing to shift how they relate to parenting. Each module offers unique grounding and embodiment meditations, lectures full of both evidence-based and practical content, and supplementary exercises to support in the implementation of new skills. Parents who have taken this course report walking away from the experience feeling relaxed in their being and confident to parent their children in a way that both feels most true to them as a parent as well as most supportive for their children. If this resonates with you as a parent or simply for yourself, we are excited to offer our listeners $100 off of this transformational course. Click the link in our show notes, which goes directly to the Rooted Rhythm Tuned In course website, and enter the discount code DEEPLIFE, all one word, to receive $100 off of the Tuned In course.
Yeah. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible because we can go like full nerd in it. But just so listeners have what they need to understand the context of this conversation is that in polyvagal theory, we see that there's not just the fight or flight or like the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Instead, it's redivided in like 3 and even 4 state that are organized on a ladder instead of like a right and left like option. So at the bottom of the ladder is what we call your social engagement state or your heal, rest, and digest state. It's the state where everything is good. Your thoughts are like, I'm going to be okay. You know, things are good. You are in capacity to be smart. You are able to, like we said, digest, heal, rest. But then all the function of your system that are not meant for survival are functioning, meaning you have libido, right? Because if there's a lion running after you, you don't need to have libido right now. Your body's going to be like, let's take that energy and put it somewhere else that's more helpful, like oxygenating your muscles, right? So you have access to all those things that bring you pleasure and joy, that allow you to connect with people, to feel intimate, to feel vulnerable. You have access to love. Like those are things that are only available in that state, right? So that's important to know. When you're not in your social engagement state, you go up into like the next step on the ladder is your fight or flight. In your fight or flight, we've talked about it. We are foot on the gas, we are mobilized, and we're doing everything we need to do to fix the problem. Over time, that chronic stress affects us in a different way. If we're able to get out of it, we'll go back in social engagement, and we'll go in and out of social engagement and fight or flight fairly easily. Having a regulated nervous system doesn't mean you live in the social engagement part. It means you're able to go in and out of the states really easily, right? They're all needed and they're all important. If you stay in your chronic state, if you stay in your fight or flight, and you start to realize that it doesn't work to fix the problem, right? So there's a lot of things in our life, like no matter what you try, it's still going to be there, that problem, right? Like it's chronic. That's why it's your job, or it's something in your schedule, or it's, you know, whatever it is in your life, that it's a relationship that's really, really difficult. So it's chronically there. And if you're unable to fix the problem with fighting for it or running away from it, then you have 2 more options. One option is to be like a little, you know, like, let me manipulate the situation so I look like, it's called fawning, right? So like you bat your eyelashes and you're like, I need help. Yeah. So it's kind of taking away from your predator the sense that you are dangerous in any way, right? It's playing like everything, you're this little girl that's helpless.
Mhm.
So the person come and saves you. So that's like one piece. The other piece, it's that foot all the way on the brake, which is called your freeze state. It's the everything stop, pull the plug, we are done. So if fawning doesn't work, if social engagement doesn't work, like let's take that example. You are walking at night in the dark and someone comes behind you to steal your wallet. The first thing you're going to do, and that's purely instinct, you're going to be like smiling and very cooperative. Like, what do you want? I'll give it to you. Like it's okay. And you're going to have a really soft face of like, let me get out of this situation through social engagement, through trying to connect with the person, to try to be like helpful. If that doesn't work, you're going to run away.
Right. Yeah.
If that person catches you, you're going to fight for your life. If that doesn't work, you might plead like, oh, please. That's fawning. If that doesn't work, you're going to collapse and you're just going to wait that he's done doing whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
And you're not going to fight it anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
You're just like, okay, let's wait it out.
Yeah.
That's the freeze state in trauma, right? It's so obvious in trauma, I find, where if you have experienced trauma before, I think the most common one where people talk about that sense of freeze is like in sexual assault, where they're a rag doll. They're not there mentally. They're not there emotionally. They're not there. What the nervous system does is that it shuts down everything. So you're hurt less. So, and sometimes you won't have memory of it. It's so shut down that your memory's gone. You're not feeling in that moment. You're completely out, like out of body experience. The thing is happening. And then when it's finished and it's safe for you to, like, you slowly like thaw up and you're like, okay, I can move now. I can get up and I can leave this situation.
Yeah.
So the freeze state is the numb state. If you're not in a trauma and you're not completely, ragdoll done, you might still be functional if it's coming from chronic stress, but it's the same thing. Yeah. It's just that you're not going to be able to think very clearly. Like your cognition's not going to work. No. You're not going to have any libido, any interest in people because your reproductive system is shut down. It's not needed right now. You're not going to be interested, motivated into doing anything because your body is like, it's a non-doing state. This is where we are. Right. So this is how you might see it. Like you might function through your day, but you get home and you watch 4 hours of Netflix and then you go to bed and you can't sleep. Yeah. That's a freeze state. Right. So does that kind of make sense in all of this? Okay.
It does. It makes so much sense. I feel like the picture that you painted is really helpful. And I just had kind of this really interesting thought. I don't know if it's controversial or not, but do you think that this is how like maybe some people like experience, and I'm using quotations here, depression, because they're labeling it as depression, but they're not realizing their nervous system is just in a freeze, like completely off state?
Yes.
Okay.
Short answer is yes.
I'm not diagnosing, but of course. Okay. It makes so much sense. And it's almost like, because I feel like I've gone through, I guess, depressive spouts, but I think now the way that you're explaining is like, oh no, wait a minute. I'm going to reframe this. And just now I'm realizing I've lived
I was in freeze
so much of my life in a freeze state, which is really interesting because we're kind of either taught or society's just told us to like, really like something's wrong, like numb it out, take a pill, take a drug, or
take a drink. Yeah. Go shopping, eat food. Yeah. Scroll your phone.
On social media even more. That will make you happy. And I have found that's the complete opposite of anything that gets me so out of the intuition that I've gotten really connected with over the past couple months that I feel is just, I'm able to channel so much more of my inner wisdom as opposed to what's happening on the outside, all of these social thoughts and the, conditioning and programming that we've been taught.
Yeah. I mean, if you think of that idea of the frozen state, that freeze state, that I am stopping the fight or flight, your brain and your nervous system has decided it's not worth trying. It's not worth fighting. It's not worth running away. You're not going to win. So if you're not going to win, stop. And so, of course, we get depressed. In that state lives helplessness, hopelessness. It's the state where your body's like, I can't. There's no way around it. I'm not even going to try anymore. Of course, we get depressed. Like, of course, we don't feel good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then we're told, well, motivate yourself, be your biggest cheerleader. You can do it. And it's like, but it kind of brings up my next topic that I want to like dive into. I feel like it's going to flow perfectly. Like, are we trapped so much in our minds that we're really trying to think our way to a solution when we almost need to stop thinking and feel, like tap into that inner knowledge, like that heart center that we're been numbed to access. It's not there. I would love to hear kind of your thoughts and expertise on how the mind does dictate a lot of what we're feeling. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Mm-hmm.
He says that like the thinking is our mind and our emotions are our body. But we can tend to get in this like thinking, feeling loop that we don't know how to escape from.
Well, think of therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just say that for now. Like, just think of how therapy works.
Yeah. And I feel you because I've done years of therapy, like in high school and college. And, you know, I was trying to recover from an eating disorder. And this woman was trying to help me the best that she could. And it was this endless. It was almost like the therapy for me, and this is just, I'm speaking personally in my experience with the therapist that I had, it was just almost stroking my ego, you know, the ego, the mind, like it was just making me think too much as opposed to what I needed to actually look at internally. And what I mean by that is feel. Like I didn't even know what emotions were at that point in my life.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was in therapy for years as well. And the mental aspect of it kind of leads you nowhere. You're like kind of going in the circle, right? Because now I understand you can't think yourself out of anxiety. You can't think yourself out of overwhelm. You can't think yourself out a freeze state or a chronic fight or flight state. Feelings are not a mental experience. You have the mental capacity to describe what you think the experience is and what it means, but they're not a mental experience. They're a physical experience. And one way that I like to explain that to people is like the word emotion comes from emotere in Latin, which means energy in motion. It doesn't mean like brain related anything. It means energy is moving through you and creating a reaction chain of things in your physical body. So for me, when someone asks me like, what does it mean to feel your feelings? At the very base of things, it means to feel your body. It means to be like, oh, I'm feeling heat. Oh, I'm feeling tension. Oh, I'm feeling nauseous. Oh, I'm feeling butterflies, right? Those are not mental things. No. Those are things you feel inside your physical being. So I think when we only look at it from the thought perspective, we're really cutting any capacity to truly make a long-lasting change. We might be able to understand the why of it's like why it's happening, like through the mental aspect, but it's not enough. Now, the other piece you were asking in the beginning of your question, like how do thoughts relate to emotions? And I think this is also where it's super important to know that there is a relationship. They're not two things completely separate. And this is why we often, like in therapy, look at it from the mind perspective. In my opinion, and this might be controversial, but your thoughts, I don't know if you remember earlier in the conversation, we talked about what you perceive to be dangerous or what you perceive to be safe. That's Absolutely. A thought, right? So the thought is at the origin of your nervous system reacting Because in the same situation, you put two different people and they're experiencing the same thing. One is going to react a certain way and the other one's going to react a certain way. Why is that? Because they're reading the situation differently. They're having different thoughts around it. They're making a different meaning around the situation. So one might think like, oh shit, this is super dangerous. Obviously, we never think like it is dangerous. Like those are not the thoughts, but there are thoughts that relate to that in a sense of like, you're not going to be okay, or this is risky, this is scary, this is worrisome. Like any thoughts in that sense, in that family, is going to bring you in fight or flight. Any thought that if the other person is like, oh, that's a challenge, that's going to bring them into fight or flight as well, but in a way more like just mobilized way of like getting stuff done, but it's not going to have the taint of the emotions that relate to fear, worry, anger, right? Like the, like, it's not fair kind of story. So all of these emotions are going to come from thoughts that are like, this is not okay. I don't like this. This is a problem. So your thoughts directly have an impact on your feelings. But because it happens so fast, to just think about it is not working because it has already had its impact on your nervous system and your body. It's too late. So you need to go to the level of your body and your nervous system to then dissipate that emotion. And once you're completely back in your social engagement, now is the time to reflect and be like, okay, what happened here? Like, what's the pattern? What was the thought? When you have access to your cognition and you're not activated in the emotional response, now you can use your mind. If you're in the emotion, now's not the time to talk about it. There's no point. It's already happened and your body's already having your reaction. So your job is to feel what you're feeling, to feel your body sensations. Over time, you start to be like, oh, I think this is anxiety. Oh, I think this is fear, right? You start to see the patterns of like, oh, I feel my throat like closing down. That means X. Oh, I feel like this knot in my stomach. That means X for me. Oh, I feel this heat coming on. That means X. So you start to see like, oh, this is what is happening. But before you're able to think about it and actually see the pattern, make conclusions, and like grow from there, it has to move through you first. If you're in it, your brain is all like cross-wired. You can't be smart about it.
Absolutely. You explained that so well. And I could not agree with you more. As soon as you kind of brought up this point, I immediately was saying everybody's perspective is different. It's individual. It's when I was in real estate, years ago in LA, we were told, because when you're listing a property, you are describing the property. So many people would walk into an open house or call me on the phone and ask if the neighborhood was safe. And our lawyers constantly would tell us, you cannot say whether or not a neighborhood is safe, because what a female that's, 5 feet, 105 pounds would classify as safe is very different than, we'll use Dan as an example because our listeners know a 6'2" guy that's 200 pounds, like safety, you cannot correlate it. It is not the same. And I get that, but I also, that's the uniqueness of our human experience. We are all, one species. We come from one thing, just manifestations of this creator, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. But the individual aspect of ourselves manifesting in its form is so beautiful that we get to experience these different thoughts, these different meanings, these different feelings. How I feel something is also really different than how you feel it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong.
No, it's unique to you and your experience. And this is where like everything we've experienced in our life kind of comes in. And if you believe in like ancestral trauma and past lives and all these things, you can add that on top, So like we are so unique. It's not even just what happened to us today and this week, but it's our whole life and a whole lot before, if you think about that.
Absolutely. It's so interesting that you brought that up. I wasn't going to bring this up on the podcast. I just really will quickly. But as I was saying, I do believe that there's a lot of generational trauma that I am healing. as I'm sure most people are, where our DNA is passed on, as what people used to classify junk DNA in the science world is actually like memories that are stored from thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago. But when I was in Costa Rica and we had a beautiful psilocybin journey, there was a part in the journey when I was sitting around the fire and I was staring out at the grass, and I was staring. Time is an illusion at that point, but there was a woman sitting next to me and I'd been staring for a while, and she looked at me and intuitively said, "Elise, say what you're feeling, like say it." And I said, "I feel really guilty about having a good time right now." And there was a firekeeper there, and I was just staring. I was like, "But I don't know why." And she was like, "Tap into that. Like, that's conditioning. Where does that come from?" And it's exactly as you were saying. We're taught to suppress the quote unquote bad emotions of grief, fear, anxiety, depression, but we've also suppressed our joy and having fun. I have forgotten to have fun. It's not that I don't laugh at, funny movies, and not that I don't enjoy time with, Dan and people that I love, but I really, thinking about this, it does. How did I lose this joy of life? Life is, I think, supposed to be lived to the fullest, and to love every moment, to love what we do, to put that passion and that childlike excitement into everything. And it's been stripped from us.
Yes, it has.
Why?
Sadly.
Where did this come from? Why? And how do we get it back?
Well, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning. I think it's a lot of conditioning, like you were saying. So to get it back, it's giving yourself permission to feel and like not waiting for anybody else to give you that permission. It has to start with your own self-acceptance and your own permission of like, it's okay. It's okay for me to feel sadness and anger. It's okay for me to feel grief. It's okay for me to feel joy. It's okay for me to feel like, it's becoming a little bit more neutral about it to start before being like fully like, it's amazing for me to feel anger. It might take a minute to get there, but in the end it's quite amazing as a human that you can have a full spectrum of emotions. And if you think like, there's a few main emotions and then they kind of re-split open. Like I use an emotion wheel with my clients a lot of time, where it's like, okay, is it like comfortable or uncomfortable? Okay. Is it more in the family of anger or sadness or this or that? And then, okay, it's anger. Is it more annoyance, frustration? Like we can like bring like, and you realize by the end, there's like thousands of possibilities, and it's so beautiful that we have access to all of this. And I think that's what it means to be human. Like we have access to so much more than other species. When you think about it, it's a privilege.
It is. I know. I was thinking about this the other day too. Our human experience is so beautifully mysterious, and feeling is such a big part of it. Yeah. Humans are meant to feel. It's our connection to life. But again, we've talked about this. We're not taught this, but it's almost like, is it that? I'm going to use the word simple, even though it's a process to decondition ourselves, but it's like feeling the most highest of highs and lowest of lows so that we can encompass this experience. Who knows, like you're saying, if you do believe in reincarnation, past lives, where are we going from here? Where have we come from? All I know right now is I remember this life. I remember this life that I'm in right now, but I'm pretty sure I will hopefully take these feelings as almost like this feeling inventory with me, because I do think that feeling is attached to consciousness at a deeper level, to feel our way through the kind of like that map of consciousness that David Hawkins talks about, like those really low emotions of fear and guilt and shame, all the way up to the spectrum of like, you reach the neutral point and then you get to, joy and bliss and enlightenment at the top. But I think that feeling is tied so much into this human experience.
Yeah. And like we talked a little earlier, when you numb all of it, right? So I think the reminder I like your listeners to kind of have is that if you do want to feel joy, you have to let yourself feel sadness and fear. If you want to feel love, you also have to give yourself permission to feel whatever is the opposite for you. Maybe it's hatred. Like it's just a valid emotion to have as well. If you want to feel peace, you have to let yourself feel anxiety. Like you can't pick and choose. And so if you want to have these moments of incredible bliss, you have to be open and willing to have a dark night of the soul at some point, because it's just all of it.
Yeah.
And that could be really scary. And this is why it's not that simple, quote unquote. And I'm having like air quotes, right? Because no one wants the dark night of the soul. Let's be honest.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that we need to work on as of like skills to make this process more simple, in the sense of less scary. Not that it's simple, but that we're trusting that we're going to be okay through it. This is what we need to relearn, that we are safe within ourselves and that our emotions are safe. And changing those beliefs, this is where it's not simple. But the action of feeling your sensations in your body, that is fairly simple, unless your body is like, panic button of like, no, this is too dangerous. Then you're going to be like, well, it's not that simple. My body's not letting me go there. Right. So
Absolutely.
It is simple and it is not simple, depending on where you start and what you're dealing with and all of these things. We can talk about it more in details, like what are the steps if you want, like how do we make that accessible to us?
Yeah, I think it would be good to give an example, or
Mm-hmm. Do you want to do it yourself? Like, you want me to coach you through it as an example?
Yeah, that'd be fabulous. Great.
Okay. So if I was having a coaching client, obviously you're not my coaching client, so we don't have a relationship yet. So I don't know where you stand right now. So I would ask you, like, are you feel safe to go in your body, or do we need to make you feel safe first? So where are you right now? Are you feeling agitated, stressed, or are you feeling relaxed and like things are okay?
I'm feeling very relaxed and that things are okay.
Okay. So because of that answer, we'll go straight into it. If that was not your answer, if someone is listening and is like, wow, if you asked me that question, I would be panicking already. Then the first step is to slow down, to get grounded, to get mindful, right? Like you need to do these things first. You need to be present first.
Yeah, in the present moment.
Right? So this is like your foundation. And maybe this is where you're going to work for months. Being present, slowing down, being mindful, because without this, you can't continue down. Now, go ahead and close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Tell me about something that has happened recently, today, this week, in the last few weeks, where you felt some kind of emotional response. It could be very small or not so small.
I had a very small emotional response today. It happened with Dan because he always leaves the cast iron on the stove after he makes breakfast and doesn't clean it. And I have to continuously ask him to clean it. And I'm typically someone who, in my caregiving role, will just do it for him, but I'm trying to step away from that.
Okay.
And my reaction to him was, I'd really like to get to a point where I don't have to ask you to put this away, that you can just do it on your own.
Okay, beautiful. So bring yourself back to that moment of like, you see the cast iron on the stove and you want to make a comment to Dan. You want to talk about it with him. What's the feeling first? Is it comfortable or uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable.
Is it in the family of anger or something else?
I'm afraid it's more fear. I'm afraid that I'm controlling him.
Oh, beautiful. So really lean into that fear. Feel the fear. Like, what if he thinks I'm controlling him? Where does that live in your body?
My chest.
In your chest.
It feels like almost someone's stepping on my chest right now. Okay.
So your chest feels like pressure, heaviness. What else? How would you describe what it feels like in your chest?
I can also feel my heart racing a little bit more as I said that statement about
Yeah.
I'm afraid that Dan thinks I'll control him.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my, I guess, the deeper fear is that he'll leave me because of it. That he'll realize at some like I don't need her to do things if I just do them myself.
Yep. Is that still in your chest, or is that expended somewhere else or kind of shifted?
My palms feel extremely sweaty right now, like just cold sweat.
Yeah. Anything
My
else?
heart's still beating a little bit.
Is there a color in your chest or in your hands? And there's no wrong answer. Like if you look with your inner eye, is there a color or a texture?
Murky.
It's murky.
Yeah, it's almost like a dark, dark, dark bluish gray. Murky.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not clear.
Stay with it just a little longer. It's murky. It's fluttering. It's heavy. It's like someone's stepping on you. It's clammy. It's warm. Like all of these things. This is fear.
Yeah.
This is your experience of what fear is. But you're okay. You're feeling it's clammy. That's just what it is. It's pressure. It's just pressure. You're actually okay right now. And you're feeling fear at the same time.
Yeah.
So you're learning to sit with the discomfort of fear in this moment.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, because it's this weird paradox of I can feel the fear, but I'm also like completely content.
Yep.
And I'm okay.
Yep. Okay, open your eyes. This is the first step. We sit with it. We feel it. We don't make stories. This is why you felt content and you felt like neutral, because mentally we don't need to go into what it means. What if he leaves? Like, what if? We don't need to go there. All we need to do is like, what does it feel like? Okay. Fear for me, when it comes to Dan leaving or him thinking I'm controlling, is it feels murky, it feels heavy, it feels sticky, if that's what it is. And it kind of removes a little bit of that like mystery and fear around the fear, because you're like, okay, I can deal with that. That's not that terrible, right?
Thank you so much for putting me through that. And by putting me through that, I mean it in the best way. Like that was a couple minutes and it just allows me to feel even deeper what the feeling of fear is for me. And I will say for the listeners, just so that they can get an idea of what I was going through within this little exercise, as soon as you asked me and were prompting me to describe to you what I was feeling in the deeper meaning when I said, oh, I'm afraid that, Dan would leave me. But then you brought it back to my body, asking what I was feeling. The thoughts stopped. There was no thought of Dan. They stopped. There was no thought. It was all right. What am I feeling in this moment? There was not a endless loop of thinking.
Yeah, it was prompting you to get out of your mind and back into your body, right? Feeling your feelings is about getting back to your body again and again. So that's the first step if and when you feel safe, present, grounded, calm. The first step is feel the body sensation. The second step is move that energy out of your body. Help your body do what it wants to do. So you want to continue a little bit more, or do I just describe what we would do? Okay.
No, let's continue a little bit more. Let's get this energy out of me.
Yeah. Now you're like, okay, I see it's there. Can we deal with this? So go ahead and tap your hands together. And if you're only hearing the audio, I'm just tapping the fingers together and kind of not clapping the palms.
Yep.
And I'm just feeling the energy between the hands, right? You were feeling a lot of heat in there. You were feeling some so just connect to that.
Yeah. It feels actually really nice. Yeah, my hands aren't sweaty anymore at all. If anything, they're like cool. It's like breezy. I know that sounds
there
weird.
you go. So we're done with the hands. make fists and go to your chest and pound your chest like a chimpanzee. I'm trying not to make too much noise for the mic, but do it as strong as you comfortably can do it.
Okay.
Just pound your chest because you were feeling that it was heavy and it was like constricting you. I'm obviously not going to come and walk on your chest, right? Even though that was your image. So we're reproducing this in another way. Like we're putting pressure, we're putting like this like heaviness sensation to it. And you'll go until you feel like it's not quite as heavy.
I was just going to say, I kind of felt it immediately. I also felt my neck relax a little bit more.
That is a sign that your nervous system is like, oh, okay, we're letting go of that fear. We're safe.
Okay, yeah.
Now put both hands on your chest, just like you've instinctually did.
I can feel it. It feels beautiful.
And then close your eyes and turn your attention to your heart. And it's probably going fast still because we were doing this active thing. Mm-hmm. But just listen to the speed of the heart and see if naturally it kind of slows down on its own. And you can start to breathe a little bit more deeply and a little bit more slowly. And kind of feeling the weight of your body on your chair. How's it feeling now?
So peaceful.
Is there a different color or texture?
I'm seeing white. And you know what I'm seeing in my third eye? I'm seeing the Vesica Pisces. And it's interesting, that is part of our logo and it is meaningful. And I don't know, I'll need to kind of sit with that after we're done recording here. But I also I want to smile. Like I know the listeners can't see me, but like I know you can see me, Erika. Like I'm just smiling. And like, yeah, my heart is, I feel like reaching back to like homeostasis almost. It's like feeling so much calmness.
So right now, if I tell you that you see the cast iron on the stove, what do you think? What do you feel? What's where you go in that in this new moment, in this new version of yourself?
I just giggled. I think it just
like it's not a big deal, right?
No, not at all. It also is like, I love him for being him.
Do you see that now you have access to love instead of fear?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I love that he makes his own breakfast. Yeah.
Beautiful. You can open your eyes. So now the step number 2 is move the energy through. We've done this really quickly, really simply by tapping your finger, tapping your chest. Like it's not crazy, like flashy, intense things. We just need to help the body move the energy because the body already knows how. It's just that we're so accustomed to like holding it back. We have to be like, okay, you can let it go now. And then it shifts and you shifted from fear about the same situation. You shifted from fear to love in 5 minutes.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That is going to be, I mean, first off, tremendously helpful for me now that I have this tool, but also for other people who really may be struggling with where to start or how to do this. It is something that can be utilized by anyone. Wow. What a powerful.
Yeah. So there's one last step from here.
Oh, okay.
Now you're in that sense of love. We want to kind of solidify it a little bit, right? So it stays a little longer. So in that case, if you were my client, I would tell you once we're done, you go and you give him a long, nice hug. Just say like, babe, I love you. Like connecting to that with him, doing something that helps you feel intimate with him. Maybe it's like, babe, can we just eye gaze for 30 seconds? Can I give you a hug? Can I come sit on your lap? Whatever you guys do that makes you feel close and connected and love, this would be your homework. Like, okay, you go do that with him now to solidify this new pattern, this new thought process. Or tomorrow morning when the cast iron is on the thing, bring yourself back to this moment and just tell him you love him instead of saying anything about the cast iron and see how that feels, right? So then it's about experimenting. And then the last step, and you already like made that for you a last step, it's reflection. You're like, oh, I saw this, I felt that. Now that you're out of the emotion, now that you're done with the emotional processing, then you can reflect on how that feeling can inform your life and what you're learning right now and improve your relationship to yourself, to Dan, right? What is it there to reveal? The fact that you felt fear around him leaving, or thinking that, that you are controlling, what needs to be done. So now it shows you so much more if you're willing to go in the reflection of like, why am I feeling and experiencing this with him? And you can talk about it with him.
Isn't it so funny that just comes from something as little as leaving a pan on the stove? There's so much more to uncover when we're aware enough or willing enough to kind of get down deep into it. Oh my gosh, I can feel the magic that you bring to all of your clients with this wisdom and knowledge. Oh my gosh, what a pleasant surprise. We did not anticipate doing this. And this is why I love the spontaneity of having these conversation and just open-ended leaving what comes up, because it was so beneficial for me. And I think it's going to be very helpful for
yeah, I thought it would make more sense for people to see you go through it and hear your experience than just tell me like, or just me saying like, 1, you get grounded and calm, 2, you you feel the body sensations, 3, you do an movement or sound or a breath that resembles that sensation. People would be like, what do you mean?
No, this is helpful. People are definitely visual, and we'll put this up on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch the exercise and take cue to do it themselves. I don't want to stop talking. I think that we've got to wrap up, but I have a very deep feeling that this is not going to be the last time you're on the show, because it's going to continue to evolve as we learn and grow and kind of discover new things about ourselves and people. It's what it's all about. Erika, lastly, is there anything that you feel is important that we either missed or didn't, touch upon with, feeling our feelings and what that means to be beautifully sensitive as humans in this experience of life?
I think we covered like the most important things. I don't feel like we missed anything. So the reminder would just be to cultivate safety from within. So you trust yourself to feel, and you go a little bit at the time, you dip your toe and you give yourself grace. And then you meet yourself with those feelings. And just like we did together, you kind of go through this exercise for yourself and you see how it goes. And if you feel like it's still very scary and very dangerous, then you ask for help.
Absolutely. Just so much beauty, so much wisdom. I just feel the loving energy that emanates from your heart. And I am so grateful that you are returning back for me and our listeners.
Thank you for being willing to play.
Yeah. If people are interested in learning more about your coaching, and obviously you have your very own podcast, On and Off Your Mat podcast, which we will link in the show notes as well. But specifically, where can we direct people to either, gather more information about you and, what your services are?
Yeah. Social would be Instagram. So either Erika.Belanger, or the podcast page is also there, On and Off Your Mat podcast. So those are the 2 Instagram pages that you'll find me. And Instagram's the only social platform I invest energy in. So this is there. Otherwise, my website, which is just my name, erikabelanger.com. And then you'll find information about coaching groups, one-on-one coaching, retreats. So like we have a retreat coming up in April, and we're going to do this coaching work of like feeling your feelings. We're going to do that every day. Like it's going to be part of the thing. It's as I said, it's at the center of everything I teach. So people can find more information there as well. There's also the freebies if people want to, explore things for themselves. And I also have a membership that they can find on the website where they can have like recorded practices to also kind of start on their own if they want. So there's so much good things out there for them. I would love for them to come say hi on Instagram, send me a little message, a little DM when they listen to this episode, and just let me know, what they think and where they're at. And if that was helpful, like I always love to chat with listeners of my own podcast and like on the podcast that I go to. So thank you so much for having me. And thank you guys for, witnessing what we did together today. I think that's special.
I know, right? Thank you, Erika. I mean, so grateful that the universe brought us together. Thank you for where we will list everything in the show notes. You have so much amazing content that is, like you said, obviously free, but you know, the coaching with you is probably just magical beyond words. Thank you so much. Thank
Such
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.